what was the outcome of that conversation with those clients?
Well, I think the outcome is important to talk about, and I want to talk about that too. What I want to talk about more is the process and
Okay,
about
great.
I know you want to know about my use of it with diverse clients, and the diversity that I automatically think of is racial and cultural. And I think about that because I'm
Mhm.
a person of color, a woman of color, a Canadian woman of color, and all three of those intersections often place me in a minority or in
Mhm.
a group that is marginalized. So I have huge sensitivity
Mhm.
to this.
Mhm.
So here's a couple of things that I have been thinking about over the years, and that's just the first example of that kind of conversation.
Mhm.
I think that it's so important when you're using an instrument, any instrument, with human beings, to
Mhm.
be aware that we all have a set of lenses that we are looking through. And I think that so recently some anti-bias, a bias kind of assessment was done on this instrument, and it was found to not have any bias in the wording of the questions. And that's a great thing. So wonderful start. The point here is not really so much about the questions, it's more about what lens am I looking at the client through? And what lens is the client looking at themselves through? And then what lens are they looking at me through when we're in this interaction together? And I think all three of those things are super important here. First of all, they didn't say this to my colleague, who was a white man, who was older, white American man. They didn't raise these objections with him. That's one noticing. Second is I didn't defend against their observations because I fully recognized that what they were saying was true, because I know that feeling of having to be careful. I know it from all three of the intersections that I just
Mhm.
talked about
Yeah.
of marginality that I share. So, so I think that's actually what's really fascinating about working with these instruments. Any instrument is, and any process is what is my lens and how am I continually sharpening my lens so that I
Mhm.
can, or maybe softening my lens so that I can include a wider set of possibilities. Because if I came in with an American perspective on that, what they were objecting to, and said, well, you should be more courageous, that's what all of the theories show, that leaders who are more courageous, they are the ones who make transformations, they get things done, they do this, they do that, and they do really well on our instrument, by their instrument's standards. If that does not fit their reality, then that saying that to them is a complete miss. It would just mean that I completely miss them.
Mhm.
So, so the work then is to, for me, is to say, well, okay, I hear what you're saying. I I see what you're saying, and I also know what you're talking about because I've experienced and felt that myself. There's a great compassion to bring forward to this conversation. And then I'm also curious if there was something in this that was useful for you. Because what I felt really like, because at first blush, it felt like what they were saying was this experience was useless to us.
Mhm.
And I hate the thought of anything that I'm doing being useless. So I just thought, well, is there any usefulness that can be found? And I think that that compassion and willingness to be curious that comes from deep within is what
Mhm.
opened the door to them actually finding something useful in their profiles.
Yeah. That is wonderful advice that, yeah, that first of all, to have some awareness of the context, but that idea of really recognizing our own bias in ourself and looking and working with that community. That's is like a lot of the conversations we've been having about race and diversity and inclusion have caused me to say, okay, I need to understand better my bias and my frame of reference and how I am showing up and contributing to this. So that advice is so great to really like not to defend, that's good, and to but to just really understand because I know whenever you do an assessment, that opens up something that could open up pain too, that for the person. So thank you. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to really take that one away in my practice now to make sure that, I mean, I'm not judging when somebody says, well, that language isn't really fitting for our organization. Okay. So tell me about what would make it useful for you. So that's great.
Yeah, I think the other piece of this that is so important, and perhaps this part of the conversation is more geared to people who are listening to this who are coaches, is what
Yep.
kind of a container are you creating with the
Mhm.
client? What kind of safe space? That's my container is what I call a safe space.
Yes.
Have you created a safe enough container? Now, my colleague in that work did not create a safe container. However, he had rank and privilege that they didn't have, that they were keenly aware of.
Yeah.
Keenly aware of. And I had a different rank and privilege that they were also keenly aware of. And I think because I do cast a very intentional safe container for these conversations, the thing that I've noticed since then, that was really the first time that it was so clear to me that, oh, there must be something that I like, something in the space between us or the field of us sitting here that allowed them to share that. And I'm so grateful that they did, because it became more useful for them, but it also became immensely useful for me as I, move forward. So here I am, 13 and 14 years later, and I can say that that has held true throughout, that I have received that feedback over and over again, that in my presence, people feel safe. And I think that for coaches, that is super important. And one way that you can help people to feel safe is to do this work of examining your own privilege, your own rank, your own. It's not to make you wrong. And we all have it. I have privilege and rank too, even though I just talked about the ways in which I don't in some circles. This is just a very important feature of reality in this time, and it could have been in past times too. And this is important for leaders too. I have so many clients who tell me when they receive their results that they'd never heard this feedback from anyone before. They didn't know they were either doing so well in some way or doing so, I won't use the word poorly, but that they were experienced in a way that was less than optimal. They never heard that feedback. Why did they never hear that? Possibly because people are afraid to speak. People are afraid to have authentic conversations with each other. And so this kind of lens, looking at things through the lens of rank and privilege, and where do I have it? Where do I not? Where do they have it? Where do they not? What do I not know about their culture? What can I sense into? What can I learn about myself? This is the work for coaches now. And I think that getting trained in an instrument like this is a great start. And then you have to begin to work with someone who can help you to transform yourself into someone who can hold a bit more complexity in these conversations.
Yeah.
So that was just a huge, like, I've had many partners along the way that I've worked with, co-led things with, who were well, just most of them are white men, because that's actually the majority of people in my industry, leadership development.
Yes.
There are lots of women coaches, but I think in leadership development, there's some rank that goes with being white and male in this industry. This is that experience of people being willing to say things to me that they're not willing to say to them, both good and bad, has been a thread that has traveled throughout this entire time that I've been doing this work.
But it's an amazing testament to the power of your presence that you were talking about, and how that space, and I mean, that's a lot that we've been working with as well. And we've actually started to name it summit spaces. It's a bit of a metaphor, as we're helping people to reach their highest potential. And that notion of brave space, where people are both invited and welcome, but expected to raise the difficult issues. And it's the practice of the courageous authenticity in how we're practicing with people. So that's and the importance of the coaches doing their own work that you've raised is very, it, it's just struck me in a new way that, I mean, I'm doing some work with the ICF conference that's coming up, and it's, coaches moving the world. So how do we have to be in as coaches in this world to be making the difference we're wanting to make? So yeah, that's really profound, and I'm going to definitely take that away for myself as both an affirmation, but also some more homework to do. I'm afraid that there's always homework that takes away from
Mhm.
this.